Hi, everyone. Let me try that again. Buenos dias, buenas tardes, buenas noches. How is everyone? I hope you're all doing well tonight. My name is Christian Lamont. I'm with storytelling, advocacy, and communications with Latino Outdoors, and I'm so proud to present a wonderful conversation tonight. It's called Agua Es Vida, as part of the 10-year anniversary of Latino Outdoors and Latino Conservation Week. So for anybody who doesn't know, Latino Conservation Week is an initiative of the Hispanic Access Foundation. LCW, as we call it, was created to support the Latinx community into getting into the outdoors and participating in activities to protect our natural resources, like water. This year marks the 10th anniversary of LO and LCW, and I'm so proud to present our panelists, our conversationalists, giants in their own fields, and wonderful storytellers, each on their own. I'd like to present our panelists, Dr. Xochitl Clare, Claudia Pineda-Tibbs, and Melissa Cristina Marquez. And Xochitl will be with us in a second. But I guess while we're waiting, wanted to ask, how are you all doing? What was something that brought you some joy in your day today?
I'm happy to go first. Hi, everyone. Mi nombre es Claudia Pineda-Tibbs. I use they, them pronouns. I am on the, I'm a settler on the land of the Mutsun, Rumsen, Shalon, Salinan, Esalon, Ohlone peoples. And that means that I am currently in Monterrey, California. And something that brought me joy today was going on a walk with my dog, who you see in the background, who is doing her best to protect our little house. And it was a great day because the sun was out, it was shining. We've been having just overcast weather for the weekend. So this was a really nice treat to be outside and have some sunshine hitting me today. What about you, Melissa?
That sounds fantastic. Oh my God, I love that. Hola a todos. My name is Melissa Cristina Marquez. I use she, her, and ella pronouns. And I'm located in Perth, Western Australia, which is located on the ancient country of the Whadjuk Noongar people, who have been the traditional owners of this southwestern part of Australia for at least 45,000 years. So very proud to be on here. My day has just started. It's my 10 o'clock in the morning. So I had a really nice breakfast and a really gorgeous walk. The sunrise was absolutely gorgeous today. So yeah, my day is just rearing to get even better after this.
Xochitl, it's great that you're back. Yay, thank you. We were just chatting about what brought us joy today. And Dr. Xochitl Clare, now that you're here, please share your thoughts about what brought you joy today.
Hola a todos. Thank you for your patience. If there are technical difficulties on my end, I'm super duper grateful to be here with everyone here on our call and everyone listening in. I had the honor and the pleasure to spend today actually in nature. I'll definitely talk a little bit more about that, but working with some youth in our community. So today was a really special day for Agua Es Vida because we were actually in the water. So really lovely day.
That's amazing. Well, I'm glad you all had something joyful in your day. I can see smiles, so that's a great way to continue and to start off. So oftentimes the world puts titles above individuals. And yet on the same hand, there's something worth celebrating when BIPOC folks achieve and earn those titles. And so without, maybe a little humble bragging, but if you could all reintroduce yourselves, but with your titles, and as long and as short as you want it to be. But I would love for folks, and if there are any younger folks, to see that that exists. That's something that I can do, that I can achieve. So why don't we start off with Claudia?
Sure. So, bienvenidos a todas de nuevo. Again, my name is Claudia Pineda Tibbs. During my full-time day, work at Monterey Bay Aquarium, which is virtually behind me, as the Senior Sustainability Program Manager, which means that I get to work for an organization that I love and talk about resource management, making sure that we are consuming as few resources as possible while we operate our wonderful aquarium. But outside of work, I am a birder. I am somebody who just loves the ocean. I'm an ocean lover. I love being outside in nature. I'm a nature enthusiast. I am somebody who also considers themselves to be an advocate and somebody who is locally in areas that advocacy weren't always available to me. So I'm a parks commissioner for my county, which means that I advocate for access to parks. Even more hyper locally, in my city of Pacific Grove, I am part of the Beautification and Natural Resources Commission, and I am the chair of our Climate Action and Adaptation Program. So inside of work, I'm all about sustainability. Outside of work, I'm all about sustainability. My title transcends all of that. And more importantly, I am a Latina person. My parents are from El Salvador. I am bilingual. I am somebody who is autistic. I am somebody on the spectrum. I'm non-binary. And in addition to that, I just love getting to know people. I love talking to people. And that's just a little bit about who I am and all of my identity or identities as a queer Latina environmentalist. So that's me. And I'm so happy to be here with two amazing people that I have been just proud to follow their journeys for a few years now and see how they are blossoming and also breaking green ceilings and blue ceilings in their own field.
Dr. Xochitl.
I just like to say wow, and I just like to say thank you for sharing all of those things, especially what was said earlier about the difficulty of labels and titles. I often struggle with that, and I do know that many people are inspired when they hear their label called out by someone they can look up to on a stage like this, in a moment like this. And so I'll share some of mine. I am Dr. Xochitl Clare. I've received my PhD in marine biology at the University of California, Santa Barbara. However, I am from Glendale, California. So that is a kind of a landlocked city. I didn't spend very much time in the ocean growing up, although my family are island and coastal people. My dad's side of the family is from Belize in Central America, and my mom's side is from Jamaica, or Jamaica, if we go back to the Spanish colonialism. So my journey began at the University of California, Santa Cruz, so not too far from you in Monterey, where I really embarked on my first adventures in the ocean. And of course, I was hooked, and when I began graduate school at the University of California, Santa Barbara, that's where I learned how to swim as an adult. And very shortly after, became a scuba diver. And now I am an ambassador of the sea. So storytelling has always been something that I've done since a very early age. And so meanwhile, doing my marine science, I got a degree in theater arts. So I am a theater artist too, and a performing artist and a dancer. And today now I'm on my way to continuing to do marine science research. And this summer I'll be spending my time with Wilderness Youth Project, which is a group that amplifies, stories like ours while inspiring youth to become ambassadors of their own ocean spaces and outdoor spaces. So in a summary, I'm a marine biologist, I'm a performing artist, identify as first gen, and I represent an Afro-Latina heritage, which is a very complex one to sometimes explain, but I'm always happy to educate and share about my identity if it uplifts others especially. So thank you.
Melissa Cristina.
Hola a todos. My name is Melissa Cristina Marquez, and I am a very proud Boricua and Mexicana who is here in Australia, where there's not that many. So I usually tend to be one of the only ones here and slowly injecting my culture into this country here. I am a PhD candidate at Curtin University here in Western Australia, where I study the relationship that we have with one of our most misunderstood predators on our planet, sharks, and how that's changed over time, the different influences that have kind of put pressure on that relationship, and how that relationship varies not just by culture, but also by predator as well. So is how we see sharks very similar to how we see other dangerous animals? So that's a lot of the work that I do. You might have seen me on TV. I'm a TV presenter for Shark Week and for Shark Fest for National Geographic, both in the past and in the present. I'm also a children's book author, where very similar to these wonderful people here on the panel with me, I am all about the diversity and the inclusion of not just different sharks, but also the different people who work with these animals. A lot of time, when I was growing up, I was like, oh, I never see anybody who looks like me studying these animals. And now I'm in the very privileged position to be that role model that I wanted to essentially be or have when I was younger. And so I think all of us can definitely understand the feeling and the validation of that representation within the different fields. So I'm very lucky to be on this panel with them as a fellow storyteller in my own sort of way.
What a crowd. What a group, really. So I appreciate you all giving us a glimpse of who you are and the titles for sure. And I think the benefit of these kind of virtual connections is that we get to speak a little bit more and learn a little bit more about these amazing names and the people behind the panels. The title of this is Agua Es Vida. And there's so much, you can throw one hashtag in front of somebody and it's a different answer. And to me, that's a beautiful, that's what diversity is all about. We all have our own experiences. They're all fed by our lives and our heritage and our culture and our upbringings. And all of that informs eventually what we present to the world. So, I wanted to ask specifically about your connections to water. Oftentimes when we're not talking about water, I ask what journey, what trail happened from the aha to where you are. Since we're talking about water, what current was it that took you from that first moment to where you are now, or where you started growing into your roles? Who wants to go first? All right.
Sure, why not? For me, growing up in Puerto Rico, that was what really kind of set the trajectory of my path. So I didn't know what a scientist was until my mom put a name to what I was doing, which was me poking around the tide pools, looking at all the animals, wanting to do a bit more research of them. And she would get me these old college textbooks of marine biology for me to sit on the concrete steps of my great-grandmother's house while it's pouring outside, because Puerto Rico just always rains, and just reading through these books, highlighting the entire passage or sometimes the entire page, because I didn't know what actual highlighting was, but I was like, oh, this all looks important. And so for me, when you say Agua Es Vida, it literally means to me my life, because there is no part of me that is separate from water, be it a fresh body of water, be it the ocean. And so I really think that when you say Agua Es Vida, it's a celebration of not just these really important ecosystems on our planet, but also a celebration of those ecosystems within us and how interconnected we are with these ecosystems and how much we depend on them. And in turn, how much they depend on us for their future.
Xochitl?
Well, that was such a beautiful answer. And I'm actually so glad that you are an author writing and telling your story. Books were the way that I connected to the ocean and to the sea. I heard stories from my mom and my family members of what it was like to grow up with the ocean just being the backdrop of your life. And to me, Agua Es Vida means ocean access because despite the fact that you may be from islands or maybe close to water, there are a lot of barriers that exist that make it such that people aren't able to, same as our national park systems or just our general access to nature, the barriers for the water tend to be very big here in institutional ways in our country sometimes, in many countries. So for me, Agua Es Vida is not only my own journey of essentially figuring out how I was going to explore the sea, surrounding myself with a community that was supportive to do so, but now extending that network and that community forward to ensure that people really do feel like the ocean is their home in order to inspire them to be able to fight for it in the ways that we know that it needs to be fought for now.
That's wonderful.
Thank you both. Yeah, go ahead, Claudia.
Yeah, for me, Agua Es Vida really means just that water truly is life, and the narrative that we choose to shape when we think about the way in which water flows. So for me, having my parents come from El Salvador, it was really difficult for them when we were growing up in Southgate, so not too far from Glendale. But kind of far enough away when you are an immigrant, because you are still very much exploring this new country that you're in. And I asked my parents not that long ago, I said, well, cuando nosotros antes íbamos a la playa, siempre íbamos a Tijuana o íbamos a Baja California. Why? Why is it that we chose, or you chose for us to, when we would go to the ocean, that we would go to Southern California and Baja California and Tijuana and TJ? And they're like, oh, it's because the water was a lot calmer and it reminded us of home. Esa agua estaba más calmada, estaba más calientita y nos acordábamos de nuestra casa, del Salvador. And so the fact that our ocean is so big, and in a way it has its own personality depending on where you are, right? It's like here in the Pacific where I'm at, this part of the ocean is very unforgiving. It's cold, it's very harsh. Yet down by Mexico, it's calm, it's chill, it's warm, it's inviting. And for my parents to be able to share that story with me was really important, and it made me feel as though with them I had the opportunity for access to the ocean. With them I had access to nature and the outdoors. And it's really interesting. I was thinking about it today because I had seen somebody post about, growing up, I didn't have anybody who looked like me on TV. I didn't have environmentalists who looked like me. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. But I had my parents. My parents were the ones who were shaping that narrative for me without even knowing it. They were the ones that were teaching me how to be environmentalists and conservationists and how to care for the ocean without them holding a title that here in Western science would have been, prestigious. And that's a wonderful journey for those who could achieve it and those who fight for it and those who have sacrificed for it. And my parents, unfortunately, didn't have that opportunity, but they still instilled those values in me. And that's why I feel as though agua truly is vida for me, because we come from a place and a country that is surrounded by water. Water was something that was important for us to be a part of growing up. When we recreated, we either went to the ocean or we went to the lake. And so agua really shaped my own upbringing and the way in which I choose to show up and what I do for my everyday life because of those types of experiences.
amazing answers. All you should all, in addition to the books you're already writing, consider writing your stories. This is beautiful. Okay, so we talked about Agua Es Vida, and it actually prompted another question of mine, because again, this week, and we talk about hashtags, and I do have to give credit to Black Birders Week, and to a much lesser extent National Parks Week, for the idea that like you can keep your community in a conversation by organizing a set of conversation pieces. And when you're looking at it through the totality of a hashtag, there are so many messages and so many viewpoints and so many facts and so many important pieces to this larger conversation. So in a world of conservation that's trying to rewrite the narrative, that's working to conserve 30% of public lands and 30% of coastal waters by 2030, in a world where we're all doing our part to take climate action, what does conservation cultura mean to you? Who'd like to go first?
I can go first this time.
All right.
So the initiative 30 by 30 or America the Beautiful is one that to me feels as though it's something to aspire to, right? We're not there yet. And what my understanding of conserving 30% of public lands and 30% of coastal waters is really for the preservation of what our indigenous brothers and sisters and two-spirited folk were trying to do this entire time, which is ensure that these resources are available for future generations to enjoy. And that's something that hasn't always been a part of the conservation narrative. Yes, there was a movement decades ago, centuries, maybe a century ago, when the formation of public land started and national parks. But that really had its particular audience in mind. And that audience was white men who enjoyed recreating. They weren't thinking about us. They weren't thinking about the diverse people who were going to form this country and be the backbone of this country. And so this initiative to preserve 30% of lands and 30% of water, we now have the opportunity to shape that narrative so that we can truly be a part of what it looks like to preserve our land and waters in a way that is more equitable and more accessible for those who are here. And so conservation cultura really is not only saying, I want to be present in these conversations that are happening around conservation, but in some cases it's, that analogy of having a seat at the table. In some cases, it's like bringing my own table and inviting my colleagues like we are right now to say, like, let's have a conversation about this, because we haven't been a part of this conversation in the past. Sometimes it's bringing your own chair and sitting at a table that we're hearing like there's no room for you, and it's like, it's okay, I brought my own chair, I'm gonna come and share my thoughts with you, because we're here to storytell, right? And so we want to storytell why it's not just about biodiversity. Yes, biodiversity is important. We want to protect species. Yes, it's about preserving land, because land is precious and we've lost too many people and there's been too much bloodshed for land. And it's also about the joy that water and oceans provide us. And that's the part that we want, that at least I want to make sure is really evident in this conversation, is because I wouldn't have had the experience that I've had there not been already a place that had been protected. And that was when I first visited the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary and the Channel Islands National Park with my science teacher, who made it so that I had an experience that was life-changing. It was the first time I was on a boat. It was the first time I went kayaking. It was the first time I saw a sea otter. And that's when I knew as a high school student that this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So for us to protect those spaces, we don't know what kind of people are going to benefit from it and who are going to take it even further to become the next generation of storytellers, of conservationists, of authors, of doctors, of marine biologists, of mothers of sharks, fathers of sharks, parents of sharks. So you see how I'm pulling from all of the things that I know of these amazing people. But that's truly what I think conservation cultura is all about. It's about us not disappearing from that narrative.
I just had to snap and dance for that. Oh my goodness.
No, that was incredible. Nailed it.
Yes. And I think a lot of what you're talking about is a mindset change. And I have to check myself first with that, right? Because when I read the word conservation, I am reading that encoded word in the language that wasn't for me. But conservation cultura means something different to me now. I'm trying to move towards looking at, recent ancestors, people that aren't too, far away from us now that are already fighting for these things. And so the more that I can see those examples within my culture, then I can know that this is possible and I can bring those examples to other people. Specifically, I hear so much about, in the dive community, when we go somewhere that may be of browner cultures and people are dissatisfied with maybe, the people there are dirty. They throw their trash this, they do their trash that. And exactly what you said about being in the room. When I'm in the room, I can tell a different story. I can talk about the traumatic colonial past that has brought us to where we are now. And I can talk to people in real time about, well, what do you think would be a good way forward, And being in the room makes such a huge difference. I think I underestimated that for a very long time. The conversations that I've been able to hear and be a part of and help make it such that people who are maybe well-meaning but don't really know because they've never met anyone that looks like me in an ocean space before. They were never able to put Belize to a face or something like that. And so I also am trying to look at people in maybe under noticed places that are very urban as heroes. For example, we know that Long Beach is a very strong Latinx community of harbors and port workers and people who make their livelihoods off the ocean. And so there are very many communities across our country that are like that. And so the more we can give people these recent ancestor examples, grandma, uncle, everybody, we're all ocean champions, then we can really reclaim that conservation cultura and really make it ours and feel really empowered moving forward, because it will boil down what it's looking like with all the different climate crises. It will be disproportionately our communities that will be affected. So we need to be very empowered, very ready to have these conversations. So that's what I feel conservation cultura really means.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think both these two professionals have really hit the nail on the head of what conservation cultura is. And just to add a little bit more onto it, I think social media has been incredible to, as Claudia dijo, allowing us to bring our own chairs. And sometimes, we don't actually want to bring our chairs to the table that's already there. We're going to go make our own table and we're going to bring our own chairs over there and have those conversations. And because of social media, we get to have these kind of very inclusive conversations that then get broadcasted to people outside of our own little bubbles, outside of our even geographical areas as well. I mean, we're all in different parts of the world, different parts of the country. And so I think that's definitely something that should be, that past, in the past hasn't been present, and we can now utilize that in our present to go and project a more diverse and inclusive and equitable future in conservation. But as was kind of said also, I think we also need to look back at the people who were doing conservation without that actually having that word, which was those indigenous communities that many of us hail from. And I think the fact that it's 2023 and still in many Western Eurocentric scientific methods, traditional ecological knowledge isn't as valued as those scientific methods, I think is wrong, because these communities have seen nature change for thousands of years, sometimes even a century, over a century. And so I think not ethically working with those communities in a way that benefits their needs, their wants, their beliefs, but also helps us in the Western scientific construct of things to gather a way of being able to coexist with these animals and with these ecosystems. I think we're then missing the point of what conservation cultura is, because then we're missing such a huge part of the original cultura that our planet had of people. And so I think it's really important that when we look forward to what the industry or the field of conservation is we need to bring everybody to the table. And that means building these relationships, taking time to build these relationships with these communities so that they're ethical, that they come from a well-meaning place, because we can't do this without those communities. And it's wrong to try to even attempt to do that without these communities.
I'm telling you, you all need to write more books. This is fantastic, and I'm just I'm privileged to sit in the same virtual space with you all. And you were talking about building our own chairs, or bringing our own chairs and building our own tables, and I feel like this is a table that we have built on our own, and it's built of trust and relationship building and reusable materials, and we can shape the future. You know, if Latino Outdoors, which started as a little baby blog and as an Instagram handle 10 years ago, as the idea of somebody who was looking on Google and who said, like, I don't see what I want to see. I don't see me. And then 10 years later, through all these amazing individuals and organizations who have helped each other, that we're able to, like, you know, be bigger than some, and then in a position where we can recognize the ones who are just starting out and then paving the way for their future. There's something very beautiful about all of that. And so, you know, we've learned about all of your connections to water. We've learned about current conservation and education. We've learned, you know, that conservation itself is, you know, not always connecting with the cultura. And we've talked about efforts surrounding the conservation of water. So I wanted to ask, and really put some time aside to this, because again, we want to meet the people behind this, these amazing personas and presence. What else brings you this kind of passion in life? I know that there are mothers of sharks. I know that there is a wilderness youth project out there. I know that, you know, Claudia, you've got so many. Like, Latino Outdoors is yours. You know, I know you've got the Coastal Birding Collective. So I really want to kind of spend some time and let you all talk about what you're doing, what else is happening, because you're all such busy human beings, and there's just this energy of creativity and spontaneity and thoughtfulness, and you're also channeling that to your own projects. So I would love to have that conversation, and why don't we start with a new author of Mother of Sharks, Melissa Cristina. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so Mother of Sharks also comes in Spanish, Madre de los Tiburones. Again, about that diversity and that inclusion. I felt like if I'm writing about my life in Puerto Rico, then the Puerto Rican people need to have it as well. And what do we speak? Español. So it's it really is a celebration about the diversity of not just sharks. You know, there's over 500 different species of sharks, but also the diversity of the people who study these animals. And like I said earlier, I grew up wanting to be a shark scientist, but never actually seeing somebody like me, a Latina, someone who was brown skinned, somebody from a different background. I always saw just white men being shark scientists. And so I never wondered or never believed that it was for me. And now that I'm in the field a bit more, there's so much diversity here. There's so many amazing people from all around the world with different gender identities, different cultural background identities that you just don't get to see. And so this was kind of a celebration of that. And also, in a way, giving whoever read it, be it a kid or most likely an adult reading it to a child, giving them permission to dream big, because if Esta Niña de Puerto Rico could do it, you guys can do it as well. And for me, a lot of the, I guess, inspiration behind the passion of what I do is, one, little Melly is still inside me. She is incessantly curious and wanting to ask questions about the ocean and asking, well, why does it work this way? Why are we doing this way? Why are we not, you know, bringing in more people to have this conversation to build towards a more equitable future? She's constantly asking these questions, and it's that curiosity that fuels me, but it's also my comunidad that brings me this passion, and it's me wanting what's best for my community and trying to do that through the work that I do. And it's something as simple as being that representation and then showcasing that representation and using that platform to showcase other people as well. And so, yeah, my community is the one thing that really not only supports me, but drives me. And by that community, I don't just mean the people or the country, but also the ecosystems as well. You know, I just a few years ago took my little cousins to that same exact beach that I grew up in, and it is so different. And because they were little, you know, I couldn't put my head underwater to see what it was like, but I can tell you that beach underwater is probably very different from what I remember it. And I don't want them or my future kids or my future grandkids to grow up in an ocean that's not absolutely teeming with life and color and its own culture as well. And so, yeah, it's the communities around me, both often without a voice, that I'm trying to fight for, and that motivates me, and I do everything for, and I hope I made them proud.
I am right, exactly. And I'm sure you do. I'm sure you will. You know, we know each other virtually, and you make me proud. So,
yes.
So, a little bit about that. You know, if anybody's wondering, and like, what was that kind of process? Like, you've done some very high-profile things. I know you've been a TV presenter. I know you are in SciComms. That's one tack that is totally different than authoring a children's book. Can you tell us a little bit about that process? Like, what was the spark? Who were some of the folks you worked with? How did the illustrations end up? Like, what's the behind the scenes of all that?
Yeah, so for me, writing children's books is just another way of doing that science communication. So everything that I've done, from the social media presence I have to the PhD I'm currently doing, the TV writing, and then the children's book writing, as well as the online writing that I do, or any of the speaking events that I do, all of that is just different ways of doing science communication, because I do think I have messages that are worth listening to. But I want to get as many audiences as possible. And so I want to get, you know, the people who are businessmen and are reading the Australian Financial Review. I want them learning about the blue economy. I want the little kid who has never even thought about being a scientist to read my book and be like, oh, actually science seems kind of cool. I want the people who one day maybe wanted to be a marine scientist or never really thought about marine science as a career or just science as a career in general. I want them playing my social media games and feeling really proud of themselves, getting all of those questions right that I put on there. And so I really try to tackle all the different audiences in fun, interactive ways, in ways that you don't even realize that you're learning when you interact with my content. And so with the books, I mean, I've got to give the biggest shout out to my agent, Alex Weiss. I mean, she's been absolutely incredible. She's not only my agent, she's also one of my good friends now. And she has been instrumental in not only allowing me to, I mean, email her in the middle of the night being like, I have ideas, what do you think? And sending like literally just a brain dump of like a Word document that's like 20 pages long, being like, this. And her being like, all right, I really like this. I really like this. Yes, we can rein this in. We can flourish that up. And she's been absolutely incredible in just really, giving me what I'm worth, even when I don't think I'm worth that much. She's like, no, Melissa, you're going to be worth more than this. I'm going to fight for you. But also encouraging that curiosity in me. And so she's the reason why I have 5 books out there, and why I've actually got 6 and 7 coming out next year. And we just got the illustrations for that and whatnot. And they're incredible. Spoiler alert, they are based out of Mexico. So I'm representing both of my countries there with the picture books that I have. But yeah, definitely Alex is the one I've got to give the shout out to when it comes to my children's books, because she is the one that gives me permission to dream and edits those manuscripts that I send to her so that the best message out there is possible. And so when you read my books, you got to think of Alex as well, because she is just an incredible ally, incredible friend, and an incredible person to have on your side just fighting for you.
Well, shout out to Alex and everybody else who inspired you and helped make this reality. That's a lot of books. And I think the game you're talking about, is it Name That Shark?
Yeah, Name That Shark, ID That Ocean Critter, Shark Tooth ID. So it's really fun seeing people who've done it for years and they're like, oh my God, I'm getting them right now. And I'm like, yay, let's make it harder.
The saving grace of Twitter, everyone.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate that insight, that look behind the scenes of all this. Xochitl, we see your videos. You're an amazing dancer, just this vibrant, splash of joy in what can often be a difficult day. And then you were telling me about the Wilderness Youth Project. How did the marine biologist and the doctor and the dancer come to create or to help or to nurture the Wilderness Youth Project, and what is it?
Yeah, okay. Well, I guess I'll just start with the fact that my science brain is attached, for better or worse, to my artistic one. People who work with me either really love that or they're really confused by it, but most people are really excited by it. So my training in art began when I was really young in theater. I did theater since I was probably 10. Started dancing and, of course, act in plays and things of that nature, all the while doing my marine science. And I'll start with just sharing that as after this PhD, which I've just completed, I'll be moving on to starting a postdoctoral research position at the University of Washington. And that is such a blessing in the next steps, because I will be working with, while I'll be based with Washington, I'll be working with nonprofits in Belize. So hold on to your horses. This does connect to Wilderness Youth Project. I, towards the end of my PhD, saw myself kind of scooting back to like my theater artist curiosities. And that is, what is the story behind your motivation? What is the story behind your motivation to build a hotel into this ocean space? What is your story behind your motivation to be confused as to what conservation, why are you against NPAs? Why are you a surfer who also is against MPAs? Interesting. So theater, it teaches you to be curious about the human experience. And so in my next steps, that's exactly what I'll be doing, not only science, but really working with nonprofits that are in the roots of the community in which my family is from and believes. And so moving into that experience, I really wanted to have time spent working deeply in a nonprofit, not just as a collaborative scientist, but actually a part of a team. And so the nonprofit that I'm working with now is Wilderness Youth Project. And we talked about small homegrown things. Wilderness Youth Project is exactly that. People who were just like, wow, there's nature. Wow, there's a gap. How do we fix that? And just through sheer will of donating gear and donating their time, built this organization that I'm now very honored to be a guest for this summer, in which I'll be helping people organize their, paddle outs for BIPOC and Latinx communities, specifically working with families of even people who are 5 years old, taking their first steps into the sea. And it's really hard to summarize how huge that is for me. And I think every time that I explain to someone, I don't have an aquatic heritage in the way of scuba diving, in the way of ocean access that sets you up, I think, a little bit to be an ocean explorer. Oftentimes people are like, okay, cool, just join this program. But I'm like, but I don't have a wetsuit. Okay, just join this program. This is me, 5 years ago. Just join this program, like show up. Oh, but I don't have my own gear. Like, what do I do? I would be very distraught about this. Like in our family culture, it is very hard. And I'm sure people can relate to this, being a first gen person, like asking to borrow someone's things. Excuse me? Like, what? But then you can't afford it. So then just don't go, preserve the image. And that is really a huge barrier for so many people, being pushed out of your comfort zone. And then even when you get the gear, you're looking around like, oh my God, I'm supposed to do this thing that's also kind of scary to me, but then also no one's like talking me through it. I have to be my own coach through this. And so Wilderness Youth Project is literally, I feel like I am helping giving people, when I say people, I call 5-year-olds, 10-year-olds, all of them are people, helping giving people their path that they deserve, right? That kind voice that says, oh, you didn't bring that special towel that makes you feel really comfortable because it's really cold. Okay, that's okay. What are you comfortable doing today in the water? And what can we talk to mom about next time to make sure that next time is really fun? Because you'll find that whether you're a 5-year-old person or a 40-year-old one, being pushed out of your comfort zone is really, really hard. And it is those conversations that I had with my water coach at, age 21, like blow bubbles. What? I'm not putting my head underwater. Blow bubbles. I promise you, my hand is right here and you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. These things mean a lot. And that's why I'm really excited about my next steps. I'm super honored to be able to work with a program like Wilderness Youth Project because it's been able to give me those moments to give someone else a moment. And I will speak from my own experience that they're unforgettable. Every time I go back into the water to scuba dive, I hear that person who was like, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And I'm like, yeah. So I'm really excited for Wilderness Youth to be working with Wilderness Youth Project, and I'm super excited to be continuing weaving in nonprofits into the work that I do. As a scientist, it's kind of unheard of. Academia has strictly drawn lines between like really doing intentional community outreach. And so that's something that I'm hoping to change, and I'm hoping to make other upcoming scientists feel like, hey, you know what? You can fight for your community and you can still have a job at a big R1 university. Let's do this. So that's my answer.
I love that. Yes.
Yeah. Like, and you're like, you're gonna be okay. And like I feel like we're gonna be okay. And Yeah, if we all had that, if every child had that, that kind of guidance, that kind of moment, child or adult, we're all semillas at a different point, whether that's in our youth or later on in life. So what about your behind the scenes? Like, who are the people that helped you do this? I've seen some of your videos. You've got a crew. Like, who are the people that have supported or like kind of helped do this? What kind of gear do you help the youth get access to? Like, what are those experiences like?
Yeah, so I'll start with the gear. Usually, and I'm being completely honest, like in terms of like helping people with gear, it's all like from people from my social media platform DMs. I get a lot of DMs. And I was that person. I would randomly message people who I admired and say, "Hey, I'm buying a wetsuit. Yes, I'm going to do it. Here's my budget. Here's my size. And what did you do? How did you do this?" And to answer your other question, that's how I kind of built up. There are so many mentors that I have gained over the years through long email chains that go back maybe even to 2017 or 2012. And so there are people that I've been able to actually cold email who've been my pen pal in the marine ocean space. And not all of them come from backgrounds like mine. So whenever I talk to people about allyship, I really try to tell them that allyship is getting someone to a place where they can bring hundreds of people forward. So that's the real answer to that question. I think people maybe go, "Oh, you didn't have a mentor that looked like you." No, we're still fighting the fight. There's still spaces that we still have to break into, and there are people who can make it so that we can see the world that we want to see. So we have to work together in this. And then your question about my videos, I think if I had to give credit to two people, it would be my mom, because I really was an expressive person from a very early age, and never was that dancing on the table ever suppressed. Never was that skit that you wanted to make. "Oh, you need costumes for this? All right, I guess we're gonna do that. Oh, okay. You're gonna be in a play now. All right, but you have to balance that with like chemistry. All right, fine." So I feel like my mom has been my biggest cheerleader in like honing my craft as an artist. Of course, I have really wonderful friends working behind an iPhone, my boyfriend in particular. So there is definitely a small and devoted crew of people who love me and understand me and are willing to help me shine. So
That's amazing. And I know with Latino Outdoors, we DM'd you, and that's how that began. So thank you to you and to everybody else who answers those messages. It really is a leap of faith, and then to be so warmly received by such wonderful people, all of you, is just reaffirms that faith in humanity, in the connections that we have. Claudia, so I have a couple of things, like, because you're involved in so much, and I know I mentioned the Birders Collective. Is that yours, or is Latino Outdoors, or is it the Ocean Council? Which one is your like passion outlet, the one that makes you as excited as what it is that you do?
It's all of them, Christian. It's hard. It's really challenging to choose one. Central Coast Birding Collective is something that my best friends and I started because, just like we've shared already, there sometimes just aren't spaces that are welcoming where you see people who look like you, and birding is one of those fields. It's traditionally been a very white, retired, older crowd, and definitely people will put resources into birding the same way they will put resources into scuba diving or surfing. And for me, Central Coast Birding Collective really was this idea that we wanted to create a safe space for people to revel in the magic of birds, because birds are amazing. I mean, come on, they're mini dinosaurs and they get to do these amazing things. Like, all of their calls are so special, their behaviors are amazing, their bodies are so weird. Like, birds are just super cool. So we started the collective because we wanted to go birding, and we also wanted to have an opportunity for folks who, like us, didn't feel safe asking questions as we were learning about birds, to be able to just be wildly curious. So that's definitely a passion project. So is Latino Outdoors. As the chairperson for the organization, I can tell you that it is just, I feel truly honored every time I get to say that I am the chairperson for an organization that I have been a fan of for years. The fact that I met Jose Gonzalez when I was at a science communications conference presenting on a panel, that's when I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, this is the person who created Latino Outdoors. And then being on the board to being the chairperson has been a journey that I've very much enjoyed. And I will tell you, nobody knows how, if we're talking about behind the scenes work, people do not know the behind the scenes work of that goes on in Latino Outdoors. In order to facilitate all of the amazing events that are happening across the nation, wow, our staff is amazing. We all know that now that we are friends with Christian, right? Because he is a tremendous storyteller, but also an advocate. And from our executive director, Luis, to our amazing community ambassadors and low leaders, it's beautiful the way that everybody comes together to make experiences happen, just like what I heard Dr. Xochitl talk about, just like what I heard Melissa talk about, those experiences with others that you want to make safe and you want to make fun. Like, that's what our LO ambassadors, our LO leaders do, and that's amazing. And not everybody gets to see that. So I think that's just a tremendous benefit that I get to see. And I do not forget it. I do not take it for granted. I think that the organization is just one that has been needed, and one that, for these last 10 years has probably changed people's lives. And I can't wait to see what happens in the next 10 years. But also being a part of Hispanic Access Foundation's Olas y Acción Advisory Council. That is another thing, another project, another passion of mine. So you can see how my identity of being outdoors, nature, the ocean are all coming together. And so not that that's necessarily the criteria that I need to follow or I choose to follow more whenever an opportunity comes my way, but it really does help because they all build upon each other, and they all allow for me to make these connections to individuals who then I can in turn say, who you need to talk to is Dr. Xochitl. Who you need to talk to is Christian. Who you need to talk to? It's Melissa. And so being able to make these kinds of connections and be the weaver of relationships is something that is really exciting to me. And that's something that one of my amazing friends and mentors taught me. Her name is, shout out to Lorraine Iglesias Rice. She is somebody who has always given me an opportunity, always given me a tremendous support no matter what I do. And I know before you ask the question, Christian, like, who else has helped you get there? It's people like Lorraine. It's my dad. My dad is really the first environmentalist that I ever met. He's the one that taught me to care for every living thing. Hay que cuidar las cosas porque tienen un espíritu, plants, from plants to little insects. I remember my dad, I would be so terrified of insects, and we would get little crickets that would jump inside of our house, and he would so gently just catch them and take them outside. And I remember being so surprised, like, ese no es un bichito, that's not a little insect. but it's a living thing. And he's the one who really taught me to care for and to see things as living things rather than a nuisance or a pest. But yeah, I mean, I just find that all of these things that I'm involved in are what fill my cup and feed my soul and allow me to be around people like you all, which to me feels very selfish because that's how I'm choosing to spend my time. But I also feel as though it's something that I need, especially in an area where I live that is pretty predominantly white. So when I have the opportunity to be around gente and to be around comunidad, I take it. When I have an opportunity to advocate for my comunidad, I'm going to take it as well. So I've just been fortunate enough and lucky enough to be invited into those spaces. And in some cases, all kind of go rogue and make my own little invitation on a sticky note and be like, I have an invitation to the party too. Please allow me to come inside. So that's a very long answer to your question. That everything to me is a passion project, and that's just what I enjoy doing with my time. And time is precious, and so I try to make sure that I fill it with things that are going to benefit not only me, but just like Melissa said, benefit la comunidad.
I think that's beautiful. There is so much, right? Like I have an overabundance of passions also, where I'm like, there's just so much. And then it ultimately, one of my bigger passions is just listening to amazing people like you all, and being in proximity in some way, and learning, and being a better human being just by hearing other people's stories. So we're almost at time, a little bit past. Do you all have a few more minutes for our last question? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I've mentioned that we're celebrating the history of Latino Conservation Week, and we've been talking a lot about growth. That's something, just a through line, especially with Latino Outdoors, like Crecemos Outdoors. And, I think, Xochitl, you spoke about the recent ancestors. And while recognizing that we inherited a very, very difficult world, an unwelcoming and abrasive and hateful world, there are some things that are going right. And through the hard work of these recent ancestors, through the recent efforts of folks like Jose Gonzalez and people in the not so distant past, 10 years ago into today, I have hope. And so I wanted to ask you all, looking forward into the next 10 years, what is something in the world of conservation, of sustainability, of rewriting the narrative, and of removing barriers that you all see that is going in the right direction? Something that gives you hope about how this is headed. Does anybody want to go first? Okay, Melissa, Cristina.
Off the top of my head, I've seen a lot of articles recently coming out, both in scientific journals, but also in mainstream media, about making conservation more inclusive. So making, for example, ocean wildlife, or ocean and marine science, making that safer for trans people, for people who are gay, people who just are outside of the norm, essentially what you would say. But it's about making it safer. It's about making it more inclusive. I've seen articles talking about how we need to decolonize conservation. And I think having these conversations where people from these communities are authoring these papers and saying, all right, if you're not going to listen to me when I'm trying to speak up at these tables, again, I'm going to make my own table. I'm going to publish the work that all of us think we need to do, like utilize to move forward. And then we're going to have these hard conversations because we're making you aware of what's happening in a way that you can't ignore, because then those get picked up by mass media and then people have those conversations about it. And so I think people standing in their truth and demanding change, no longer sitting in the background being like, oh, well, maybe if we do this. No, very confidently standing up. These are our living truths. This is how we think we can make this a more inclusive and diverse and safe industry. I think that is something that I mean, we weren't seeing that even 5 years ago. And so seeing it now, I think is really, really important, because I think people are tired of being quiet and are tired of this status quo. And I'm, for one, am all here for it. I don't want the status quo to continue, because look at where the status quo has kind of gotten us. And so people are like, cool, we want different, and we will be the ones who make it different. And so I think that is a great step forward. We have so much more to do in order to make this a really inclusive and really a safe industry for everyone to be like, oh yes, this is actually a viable option for me. But I think we're taking steps in the right direction, and I'm proud of the ones who have taken those steps, because, you know, for some of them, it hasn't been safe for them to do so. And so that they're putting themselves on the line for future generations, commendable, very, very commendable.
Full of hope and commendable. And for those people who are out there, like, you have a community and we are easier to find. So appreciate that, and appreciate all the people taking those risks and those chances out there. Claudia, how about you? What's something that gives you hope? What's something that you see heading in the right direction for the next 10 years?
Yeah, I actually will quickly touch upon two of those things. One of them is, however, you know, you might feel about social media, I feel as though social media really is an opportunity to inspire hope. There can be so much to be said about how young people are using social media to express how they're feeling about climate change, about how they're feeling about current political situations and how it's affecting them. And I truly think that without social media, we wouldn't have access to that information. And so we would lack empathy. We might lack certain things that are extremely important for us to consider, because we can't always know the perspective of an individual if we don't share that identity. So I think that social media has really been helpful and will continue to be helpful in raising awareness about those types of feelings, attitudes, outlooks related to conservation, related to sustainability. And also we'll see some amazing people who are probably moving the narrative forward in a way much faster than traditionally it has moved. And then the other part that brings me hope or makes me feel as though these next 10 years, there might be some bright spots are, I'm keeping my fingers crossed, but this current administration and the work that they're doing around ocean justice, around environmental justice in particular, and how it transcends into communities. There's a lot in terms of assembly bills and Senate bills that we're seeing across the entire state of California, that we're seeing in other places as well. And to me, I think that's extremely important because it allows for accountability, and it might take some time for that to be set in place. But as long as people are advocating for it and are speaking up, which is probably one of the most important parts, for people to raise their voices and to say why they want to support certain initiatives, that's where I think that there is hope. So using the power of not only social media to talk about those types of bills and talk about those types of acts, but also being able to write your legislator, your representative, your speaker, your senator, whatever level of government somebody is at, and engage with them. So these are things that we didn't have in place maybe 10 years ago. 10 years ago, maybe it was you write a comment letter and it has to be printed and it is delivered in the mail. And now that is so much easier with technology. So I really think that technology is going to allow us to raise our voices and amplify our voices in a way that hasn't happened in the last 10 years. So that's why my outlook on the future is a little brighter than I think I would have said 10 years ago myself.
I love that, and I don't disagree. Like, social media has brought us all together, and there's something beautiful about that. And this entire week is a testament to, you know, one simple hashtag being interpreted many different ways and bringing so many communities and individuals and organizations together. So you're preaching to this choir for sure. Xochitl.
Yes, I will second and third everything that everyone has said, and I will add that what I'm hopeful for is around internal work. So sustainable mindsets is what comes to mind. We talk about sustainable practices, but for me, and I think for many, the pandemic was a reality check that we are working so hard, so fast, and the work that we're doing and the challenges that are ahead of us will require a lot of emotional strength. It's a fight that must be done. But when it comes to our internal mindset of how we are going to process each other, it needs to be sustainable, meaning what is woke now will be asleep eventually. So as much as we have resistance from folks who are, you know, against woke culture, and all the wokey people are walking around with their eyes open, feeling really proud, just know that you need to cop a sustainable mindset, because it is empathy, it is compassion that will allow us to move forward in a sustainable way. And I see that a lot in my education spaces where I'm working with people who have maybe a shared heritage, but not a shared perspective on how to move forward in that heritage. And so we're seeing so much more representation, but that does not mean that we stop in terms of growing our hearts and empathy, and our ability to work with each other and receiving each other is going to be so important. And the reason why I'm hopeful is because I'm learning so much from the mentors in the generation just not even a step below mine as to how to be a better mentor right now. And that's been exciting. I'm just like, whoa, like, where have we gone in such a short period of time where things that I was wokey about are asleep, and I can learn from somebody else. And I think as long as we have that, that's where we can hold arms and like really, really, you know, stand strongly together, because the challenges ahead we can't always predict. But if we are ready to evolve as a unit, then I think that that's what gives me hope. And I see it happening already.
And how can you not be hopeful, you know, when you have leaders and creatives and individuals and change makers like these three wonderful human beings, and the perspectives that you all are sharing and the secrets and the behind the scenes that you also were so gracious in sharing with us. I think that's time. And I want to leave this off on a hopeful note, and you all got me there. I do believe that we can do this, and we can do this together, and we are affecting wonderful, wonderful change, and we've got to continue the work, and break trail and make it easier, and stand on the shoulders of giants and continue this important movement, and keep growing it and opening up that tent. So I appreciate you all so much. We will let everybody know how to follow you if you want, your social media handles, how to get in, you know, how to get your books and support your organizations and your passions, because your passions are our passions. So thank you all so much for being part of Agua Es Vida, for being part of Latino Conservation Week's 10-year anniversary, and for being part of the Latino Outdoors 10-year birthday. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful night, and thank you all so much for being who you are. Appreciate you all.
Gracias. Adiós.
Gracias.